Salutations. I'd like to start off this fireside by quoting Haas from Infrared with statements that he made during the Center for Political Innovation conference in Austin, Texas. We should cease to see leftists as a reservoir from which we should attempt to draw support. As far as leftists are concerned, we owe them nothing. We don't need this acute minority of parasites on the working people of this country. Okay, for the record, I will say in so much that I do not hate Haas. On some things, I very much appreciate Haas's insights. When it comes to putting extra scrutiny on European aristocracies and monarchies collaborating with Western Wall Street billionaires to rob humanity blind, Haas and I are of the same mind. We're on the same page as far as that issue is concerned. In addition to such, I can appreciate Haas's forthrightness with his dismay and frustration over how the American left has been co-opted by the mainstream liberal establishment. As someone, myself, who towers in at 5'4", I can also relate with Haas, or what he may be feeling internally, as his height, as if he had any control over whether or not he needs a chair to reach the cereal box on the upper shelf. I have that problem myself, which is used as a subject of ridicule by online leftists as they have nothing original to say other than pointing out the obvious. Wow. Make fun of a short person for being short. Wow. So ingenious. In some respects, Haas reminds me of a younger me, and therefore I do relate with him and where he's at. With that stated, there are certain elements about Haas which disappoint me. Him using his platform to endlessly troll idiots and, fembots on the internet who have nothing better to do than project their negative energy onto him. Him allowing toxic 4chan elements into his circles to espouse socially backward doctrines under the cloak of Marxism. And yes, branding homosexuality to be on par with incest, degeneracy, and bourgeois decadence in 2022. Yes, folks, it's backward. Whether they like to admit it or not, it's backward. Him using his platform over the winter to organize a counter demonstration to protest the trans community over their walkout over Dave Chappelle's latest stand-up Netflix special, instead of organizing retail workers to stage a Black Friday strike over abysmal working conditions and supply chain issues at a time when that should have been done. The stunt he pulled, riding on an animated stuffed animal through a shopping mall while requesting that people take him seriously. And his latest comments at the CPI conference, which I opened up this fireside with. I don't agree with much of that. Of course, his biggest defenders, a bunch of rightfully alienated Zoomer male types in their late teens and early 20s, will say something to the extent of, "Yo, bro, why does Haas need to prove anything to you? You're just a washed-up has-been from the Occupy era, bro." Okay, foolish, ignorant kids they are. As I mentioned in other videos, I've been around the block for a bit. I've had my picture up in the NYPD headquarters in a mafia hierarchy style. And I've had Secret Service detail on my ass, okay? I've rolled with people who slung rifles over their shoulders with Mexican Zapatistas. I've rolled with people who have infiltrated Exxon-owned property and exposed oil leaks. And I've rolled with people who were the original part of the original hacktivist collective called Anonymous, and who have used their skills to take down eBay and MasterCard more than a decade ago. I'm not just some flim-flam random leftist who hates Haas. I don't hate Haas at all. No. Tell you the truth, I'm also not some random person who attended a few Occupy protests like so many people say, "Oh, I was part of Occupy." No, you weren't. I was literally part of the core group, which that machine, was built around. So let us have a little chat, why don't we? Yes, I get it. The contemporary American left is frustrating. The scene is misguided, lost, and there are tons of misdirected anger and rage being allocated toward all the wrong people and at all the wrong places. The very same can be said of Trump supporters. Everyone wants to blame everything except for the root cause behind most of our problems today, thus being the neoliberal economic system which places human profit over human need. For a very sweet moment in time, back in 2011, the early days of the Occupy movement, we were able to get almost everyone on the same page around one unifying slogan. We are the 99%. Didn't matter if they were socialists, anarchists, liberals, conservatives, libertarians, conspiracy theorists, 9/11 truthers, trans, gay, straight, black, white, indigenous, Asian, or whatever. That one basic slogan, we are the 99%, was a game changer and unified people who otherwise had no reason whatsoever to form networks of resistance and coalitions, except for the reason of standing up to Wall Street and the 1% Western oligarchy. Over time, the liberal establishment would crush the Occupy movement and then resurrect its corpse in the shape of forming many offshoot movements and voting blocs. The AOC voting bloc, the Bernie Bros, the DSA types, and to an extent, the blue no matter who, Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden types as well, which were reinterpreted in the lens of promoting the agenda of the Democratic Party. And thus, that is why, as I interpret it, the left has as many problems that it has today. The left is no longer left. They are unwitting, Russia-phobic Reaganites who may appear intersectional and progressive for the mere sake of appearances, but who unwillingly and dutifully act as the useful idiots of the DNC and their rapid response deputy director, Aaron Black. The marriage between the anti-Trump liberals and the so-called radical left set the American left back at least 2 decades. I was a witness to all of this. A groundbreaking movement such as Occupy Wall Street, which was able to unify people from all across the board, a movement that I sacrificed my job, my college education, my family, my health, my liberty. Yes, I took 2 arrests and a couple detainments as well. And my life, for it all went up in a heap of flames to be sacrificed on the altar of American liberalism. If there is anyone who should be rightfully angry with the American left, I should be that person. What is before us today is not what any of us who were truly committed to the nonpartisan, anti-corporatist, anti-neoliberal vision of the original Occupy Wall Street, which took on both the mainstream conservative establishment and the mainstream liberal establishment, had envisioned. This is not what we had envisioned. And it's not the place of younger, ignorant, arrogant Zoomers in their late teens and early 20s to project upon matters that they know very little about because they weren't there. Learn something, kids. Why don't you? However, I'm not gonna go so far to label everyone on the American left as so-called parasites who no one owes anything to. Most of the contemporary American left, as I interpret it, are well-meaning Zoomer types who embrace postmodernism and gender fluidity and anti-racism and what they sincerely believe to be is anti-fascism, at least as it is presented to them by controlled opposition such as Vosh and the liberal establishment, to them, Trump and all of his supporters are cartoonish villains to be opposed by the good guys. But at the same time, these folks were too young, or not even born yet, to directly experience the very real evil taking place within the United States during the Bush era post 9/11. To them, being anti-Trump is all they really know, and they do not understand how the geopolitical economic demon of neoliberalism operates and evolves, co-opting social justice to advance its own nefarious ends of profit accumulation and global resource monopolization, done in the name of defending democracy. During 2020, at a time when all the Trumpers were marching on state capitals with loaded rifles over COVID restrictions, the American left wasted a golden opportunity to turn the Blue Lives Matter crowd against the very blue lives that they would defend only a few weeks later after George Floyd was killed. The contemporary American left fails to see anyone outside of the liberal establishment as part of the 99%, and the people on the right do the same exact thing. And that is the biggest problem right there. We should be unifying people to fight the neoliberal establishment, not dividing them against one another to solely cater to rightfully alienated social conservative reactionary types who, due to no fault of their own, and this is what Zoomer leftists fail to understand, but due to 6 decades worth of state-sponsored Cold War era anti-communist, pro-free market, brainwashing Kool-Aid, and, who do not quite understand dialectical materialism, let alone intersectional struggle. We are not about the business of pushing the left further away from the center, nor are we about the business of pushing the right further away from the center. We seek to mend these artificial divisions, shaped by never-ending culture wars, to create a unity platform that addresses the root cause of all contemporary evils, which is neoliberalism, which once upon a time ago in the 1980s hid behind racially homogenous Christian fundamentalism and the American flag, but now hides behind intersectional secular postmodernism, BLM flags, and rainbow flags. We must do the work of untangling the anti-Trump left-liberal alliance and redirect the left to resuming their interrupted struggle against neoliberalism, which they abandoned in 2016. We can't do that when we discard all contemporary leftists as parasites. We can't do that when we make unnecessary spectacles of ourselves, riding on stuffed animals in shopping malls, or engaging in overly macho yelling matches with clinically insane people who think pedophilia is normal. We should not even waste our time on those people or take them seriously, along with all the other online dick measuring contests or pandering to the irreverent 4chan crowd that has no social life whatsoever, or trolling misguided individuals who believe that one's gender or race is the sole determining factor behind whether one is revolutionary or not. That only makes the agents of disinformation, such as Vosh, look credible, when that is the last thing any serious anti-imperialist or Marxist of any sort should want. Haas has a platform with great potential to do great things, far larger than my small platform, that's for certain. But as I interpret such, it would be best for him to cool down and be slightly less of a Napoleon and be more like a Talleyrand, navigating around contemporary socio-political complexities and landmines as a savvy diplomat, weaving himself in and out seamlessly within the left and the right, tying loose ends together, getting people together, and, less so like a hard-headed bull in a china shop that is bound to step on a landmine due to his carelessness. While I very much share with him anger and outrage relative to the American left's foolish marriage to the liberal political establishment to take down Trump, that is not to say that I agree entirely with Haas's approach, evidently from what I've been saying, or even his interpretation of the aggregate proletarian culture. The United States is not Nicaragua, not Iran, not the Soviet Union, not even China. Our proletarian culture is rebellious, anti-authoritarian, anti-elitist, mostly secular. I mean, religion's still a thing, but we're mostly secular. Racially tolerant compared to half a century ago, and mostly tolerant of LGBTQ individuals compared to 2 decades ago, seeking to turn the clock back to a time period when society was more repressive, less expressive, and more theocratic is not and won't ever be a winning strategy. Once a present is unwrapped, the box is ripped open, and what is done cannot be undone. And we must evolve. We, as anti-imperialists and crusaders against neoliberalism, we must evolve with the socio-political circumstances that envelop all of us. Otherwise, if we do not evolve, we become obscure and eventually extinct like the megalodon shark. We don't want that to happen. Our society and our culture is built differently. And once again, casting aside people just because they are or were deliberately misguided by the liberal establishment to chase after culture war hobgoblins is counterproductive and only reinforces the validity of the system that we have set our sights on to thoroughly and completely dismantle. We need anyone and everyone, not just the QAnon crowd, but also leftists, if we can convince them to set aside their petty cultural crusades to focus on the bigger picture. So in closing, to reiterate, I do not hate Haas. When he is on his game, he is an articulate, knowledgeable, historically literate tour de force of philosophy and dialectics. That is undeniable. And for someone in his mid-20s, the extent of his knowledge is not only impressive, but incredibly remarkable. Speaking as someone who has also been accused in the past by many of having a massive ego, and rightfully so, I admit it, I have an ego. It would not hurt Haas to do the same as what I'm attempting to do, and that's just turn down the ego a couple notches. We'll never get rid of it, but we can turn it down a couple notches. I speak from a position of wisdom, and as someone who has been there before. I made a lot of mistakes in the past, and have alienated many people I should not have alienated due to my stubborn and hard-headed personality. We all get caught up in ourselves once we have attained a certain level of notoriety, but notoriety can be fleeting, and the people who you think are your friends can turn out to be users who will take the slightest moment of vulnerability to ruin your reputation as a stepping stone to make themselves look better. Humility is the best way to attain real and meaningful friendships and partnerships, and in my view, a slightly more humble Haas has the potential to go on and do great things, and far greater beyond anything that he is doing right now. But that is something that he has to learn for himself. I wish him well in his future endeavors, and should he watch this fireside, I hope he takes what I have to say with consideration and contemplates on amending his style slightly and amending his rhetoric slightly so he can achieve his truest and greatest potential as a uniter, not a divider. That is all. This is Comrade Pella, signing out.